Ladies, gentlemen, good people, we have a special guest joining us this morning. None other than the 19th president and CEO of the NAACP, Derrick Johnson. It is important to note that while he sits at the helm of the organization now and has since 2017, he also served as the president of the Mississippi State Conference. I should also share, just because I believe in full transparency, he is someone I call both Mr. President because as a result of his leadership, I actually paid my dues after not doing so for a long time, although I served in leadership in college, and someone I also call my big brother. He is one of the best political minds out there, and it is nice to have him join us this morning. Mr. President, thank you for joining us.
Welcome to the program. Appreciate you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Oh, I was looking for the applause. I got your applause. Here you go. Here you go.
You got it?
Yeah, I got your applause. Yeah. I hit the wrong button. Yeah. Good to see you.
Mr. President, for those who may not be tracking the electoral maps issue in Texas closely, can you break down why they should be and what the national implications are?
Sure. So redistricting is the second most partisan thing in a democracy, followed only by voting. And what has happened in Texas is unprecedented. Typically, the redrawing of political boundary lines, which is required by law, happens every 10 years after the census. And because this president and the governor want to steal or guarantee the midterm elections, they have decided to do a midterm redrawing of political boundary lines. Now, when you draw the political boundary lines, we call it redistricting or drawing the maps, you almost predetermine the outcome of the election based on what voters are placed where within a particular set of districts. And so for Texas to take this move is not only unprecedented, but they also are taking a move targeting African American and Latino districts, all but destroying a historic district where Congressman Al Green served, undermining the performance of a district where Jasmine Crockett is serving, pretty much eliminates Mark Vesey's district, and all in this effort to maintain control of Congress after the 2026 election. We filed a lawsuit because it was not done for partisan reason. It was racially targeted and motivated. And we're clear about that based on the districts that was redrawn and the performance of those districts. It's important because redistricting normally is an interstate activity, but now they have elevated the stakes and made it a chess game of 50 squares with all states on the board, forcing every state governor who care about democracy now to reconsider what should be their step to respond to what Texas is doing, as Texas is seeking to influence and put that thumb on the scale for next year's election cycle.
Now, Mr. President, we were talking before you joined us about the difference between redistricting, which, as you've shared, and as I said before you joined, happens every 10 years as a result of the census, versus this racial gerrymandering and the need to call it what it is. You filed a lawsuit. Can you tell us a little bit more about the lawsuit itself?
Right. So just terms of art, legal terms of art. So gerrymandering is the process, and it was began to get called gerrymandering in the early 1900s, if I recall correctly, because you had an individual who was a mayor, who decided that he wanted districts to reflect an outcome that he will have a city council that agrees with him. And so they drew these strange looking districts so that only certain people will win. Well, you fast forward, there were multiple efforts to maintain that type of practice. Well, in the early 60s, the Supreme Court said every district has to be within proportional size of each district. So the smallest district can only be a percentage larger than the smallest district. So proportionality became an issue. Then that was quickly followed by the 1965 Voting Rights Act, where people celebrated for the first time was going to have a real democracy where we could participate. And individuals, particularly in Mississippi, say, wait a minute, if we register every African American and every last one of them go vote, we will still lose because they just changed the boundary lines as opposed to the congressional lines going from north to south. They began to draw the lines from east to west. And in doing that, they were balancing off white populations in the eastern part of the state against the black population in the western part of the state, commonly known as the Delta, to ensure that there will always be white candidates to win those congressional districts, and African Americans would not be able to elect candidates of their choice. That's a racial gerrymander, where you intentionally draw the lines to ensure a racial population would not have an opportunity to elect a candidate of their choice. It doesn't guarantee they're going to elect black, white, green, and yellow, but it creates a level playing field that you're not using the tool of redistricting to minimize that vote by what was titled in the 80s lawsuit, the Gingo principles, where you're cracking the district, you're packing the districts, or you're stacking the district.
Thank you. Thank you for unpacking that.
Well, I'm looking at the just the basic breakdown of the actual suit, and the legal basis is, as you said, the lawsuit claims the map violates the Voting Rights Act and was drawn with impermissible racial motivations. Now, they always, when these types of issues come up, they always give us, how can you prove that about race? And there is data that explains the ethnic makeup of these neighborhoods and communities, correct? So
Absolutely correct. Yeah, go ahead.
no, I was going to say. So how are you prepared to fight that counter when they say, well,
But
technically, yeah, go ahead.
we just look at the data. The data says, right,
Yeah.
after the taking of the census, that we are grouped in what's called census tracts and census blocks. And in tracking that, we know the demographic makeup of every census tract and census block. And census tracts and census block are small geographical boundary lines. They're even smaller than zip codes. So you know when you're building a district whether or not you are adding people of a particular community or you're taking them away. And then if you overlay that, if you want to use the partisan term with electoral data, it tells you whether or not it performs a certain way, whether it's performing Republican or Democrat. Now, what they're going to say is, no, we didn't do this for racialized reason. We did it because it was partisan, because these districts perform this way or versus that way, and it's a partisan activity. Therefore, it's legal for us to do it for partisan reason. Well, if it's legal for you to do it for partisan reason, why only these districts? Why don't you move these populations? And that's where it becomes a little hairy, because those populations that you targeted were African American and Latino districts in a state where the population isn't majority white population. So you went in and you targeted only certain districts, and you had a couple of factors. One, you had a letter coming from the White House saying, "Hey, get rid of these districts." You had statement by state legislators. You had statement by the governor, and so we're going to enter all of that into the record. It's in our pleadings.
It sounds clear to me. And Ms. President, we've had conversations about the critical importance of Black political power before. Something you said previously, I will never forget. That was, and I'm paraphrasing here, we may not be partisan, but we are political as hell. And so in keeping with the need to be politically aware and engaged, can you tell the listeners what the national implications are as it relates to this issue in Texas? What should folks be taking away from what is happening in Texas?
So what Texas is trying to do is preset the outcome for the 2026 election by tampering with 5 districts, because the margin in the House of Representatives is so narrow. And so now it has triggered a domino effect. And that domino effect is triggering governors in what's called blue states to also consider, well, that's not fair. That's not what this democracy should be about. And this is unprecedented. So for a state like California, they say, you know what? We established a nonpartisan redistricting commission so there be fairness in the process. And we amended our constitution to do it. And Gavin Newt, the governor says, wait a minute. So if Texas is going to play this way, there is no fairness in this process. So he introduced a piece of legislation in front of the California Assembly that adopted the legislation to put back on the ballot in California to amend their constitution to allow the state assembly and the governor to draft a plan to respond to what Texas is doing. That's why it's a 50 state chessboard now, not an individual state activity, because what Texas is doing, they're elevating the conversation in a way in which that we have never seen before, and they're doing it at the behest of the president, who told them, we need you to go back and redraw your maps.
Now, you're claiming that your claim is that in the lawsuit that the map violates the Voting Rights Act. Do you believe that this lays the foundation for a public confrontation with regards to the Voting Rights Act? Force that discussion, because they've been trying to, the talk is that there's going to be a fight. It's going away at some point in time. Does this lead to that?
Well, we cannot predict what the court is going to do, but we need the tools we have to fight against what was obviously taking place, right? And so this is filed in federal court. It's going to go to the Fifth Circuit. The Fifth Circuit is one of the most conservative circuits in the of the federal circuits. There's another case that we have in Louisiana where the plan was drawn and then they want to reverse it. That's also in the Fifth Circuit. So, the two we have is the Voting Rights Act. And we'll be foolhardy to sit back and not do anything, and say, well, if we do it, they're going to come after the Voting Rights Act. They're coming anyway.
Mm-hmm. They're coming anyway. Mm-hmm. That is important.
Mm-hmm. Right? And so for all of your cousins who said, well, there's no difference in these candidates and it don't make a difference, this party is just like that party, that was some bullshit from the start. With if you don't understand comprehensively the outcomes of elections, shut up.
Period.
And educate. Because what happens here, this was the long game. And they played a long game because we were winning, not losing. And we allowed media, social media, and pundits who were just talking to define outcomes that were not true. We were winning. This really kicked off after the New Deal policies of 32, leading to the Great Society policies of the late 60s, because Black folks pushed that to ensure the New Deal policy applied to our reality. And the response to that was John Birch Society, because they didn't want to pay taxes, William X. Buckley, because they needed an intellectual frame on Harvard's campus. And then when George Wallace ran, they realized there was a fertile group of disgruntled whites, primarily Southern voters, who was racist and was feeling displaced, and they needed somebody to blame their displacement on. Therefore, the others did it, whether the others are the Blacks or the women or the Latinos, you name whatever the others. Those three groups came together and they began to redefine the public conversation, and it was housed at a newly created organization called the Heritage Institute.
Yes, teach.
That's how all this comes together. Not because we were behind or losing, we were winning. And the Heritage Institute from 1971 or so, they began to test messaging, not policies, messaging that will continue to move that disgruntled group and put fake, false narratives out there around impacts of public policy, all with the goal of defining who gets taxed, who's not taxed, and what those tax dollars are spent on, and regulatory policies. The fight isn't about race. The fight is about money. Race is the tool that's being used.
That's right.
To get operate in spaces because they feel displaced. That's why we still have this huge opioid epidemic in this country, because white folks are disillusioned. They don't know what to do. I always said the most brainwashed community in this country is not the African American community, not the Latino community. It's white people. It's white working class people who've been sold this bill of good that somehow their skin privilege is superior to everyone else while their pockets are being picked. And so here we are in a scenario where those same people, they're going to be forced with some policy violence reality when they lose their health care, when their veterans benefits are going to be more difficult to access, when their children's aspiration will be less than theirs because there's no outlet for them to get a quality education. When all of society and the investments that we put in collectively, they would not see the benefit of because their farm is being taken, because their mortgages have increased in cost and decreased in value. We are going to become a second-rate nation because we have eliminated the research institutions' money to be on the front end of innovations. Now we're going to go back to a blue-collar, rural working force where China and you name the country is going to leapfrog over us because of these small-minded individuals who only care about their profits and using the majority of white Americans to carry out their interests.
Wow.
Mr. President, you have shared so many things. You talked about, and at least what I heard is you can't really separate and decouple capitalism from racism. You talked about the importance of messaging, which is something I'm constantly talking about, and that we are trying to do here is ensure that people have the right language, control the narrative to the extent that you can. And what I'm hearing is, and I'll just say it here in this family, we need to have our own comparable, and by comparable I mean winning strategies, and our equivalent, if you will, of foundations, think tanks, etc., in order to be able to fight this fight effectively. Because again, we can't talk about party and not talk about serious opposition. So I really appreciate the jewels that you just dropped there. I do believe in a good call to action, Mr. President, and I want the listeners to be not just informed, but empowered to do something. Can you provide some actionable steps for folks who want to get involved in the fight for liberation, but may not know exactly what to do? Give the listeners 2-3 things that they could be doing right now if they're not already actively engaged in this fight for our full freedom.
If you live in California, we need you to vote for the map that would allow the state assembly and governor to advance a map to respond to Texas. If you live in Illinois or Maryland, we need to continue to push those governors to respond the same. If you're not engaged in an organization, get engaged. I tell people organizations are vehicles for voice. I encourage NAACP, but you want a different vehicle? Fine, as long as your voice is being activated. In this moment in DC, under military occupation, we need more people engaged with those local organizations to resist and do it in a way in which you don't put yourself in harm's risk. What does that mean? If there's going to be training on your rights, go to those trainings, send your kids to those trainings so you know how you can communicate with the military force and not put yourself at harm's risk. I seen the video and I loved it to death. They had 2 young men sitting on the curb and they was questioning them and they said the question over and over: are we under arrest?
Am I
Are
being
we under
detained?
arrest?
Yep.
Are we being detained?
Am I free to go?
Yeah.
Right? And well, give me your ID. Are we being detained? Because we do still have rights. You got to force them to recognize your rights, or they're gonna trample over it, and that way you have a standing opportunity in court. If you live in D.C. for these arraignment hearings, we show up, pack the courthouse out, because right now you have potentially judges who know that these are Fourth Amendment violations, and they want to address the violation of illegal searches and seizures because they're trying to get more people to plead. Do not plead to these bad cases. If you did do anything and they begin to search you and they had no probable cause, you have the Fourth Amendment right. If you live in D.C., if you in Chicago, start the trainings now, go to it, begin to have the public conversation about what the threat is of military going in. If you're in the military, we don't want you to get court-martialed, but be mindful, because you're a reservist. When you go back to those states you were sent from, it could be you next. It could be your child. It could be your grandchild. Because we know you took an oath So we don't want you to get court-martialed, but you don't have to treat people any kind of way. The worst thing to see is a brother or sister in uniform treating our folks as if they don't recognize what's taking place. For the NAACP, we need your support. This lawsuit, Louisiana, and we would probably file north of 20 lawsuits. It costs. We got to finance our own revolution. We got to finance our own protection. $20 a month. We need you to do that. At the end of the day, get engaged, be involved. Don't be an armchair revolutionary.
That's right.
Because all you're there is eating popcorn and giving an opinion. Who give a damn about your opinion when the fight is in the street?
What's the direct way to support NAACP financially?
NAACP.org. Donate page pop up, NAACP.org. If you can be a monthly subscriber, $10, $5, $20 a month, $50, whatever you can do, we need your support. Support our Black institutions. If it's us or you name the institution, let's come together. I love when Kwame Ture used to come to the States every year. And he would say, organize, organize, organize. Whether it's your Sunday school group, whether it's within your church, whether it's in your sorority or fraternity or an organization of choice, as people of African descent, we must organize now more than ever before.
That's right.
Mr. President, thank you so much. I'll just ask one last question and then let you go because I know you have a lot of work to do. The best way for folks to stay up to date on the developments related to that case, is that the same website that you've already provided?
You can go to our website. You can follow us on all social medias at NAACP because we are providing updates there. We're also providing updates as the mapping, what I call Civil War, continues to move. Again, if you are in California, be involved, be informed, and understand that this is not about California. This is about our democracy. This is about our nation. And for Black folks, the way we embrace democracy, despite the fact that the democracy have not always embraced us, if you got a better option, let me know. I don't know a better option. We've invested too much. We've bled too much. We've built too much of this country just to walk away from it. So don't get caught up in folks from our community giving mis and disinformation because they think they got a microphone now because they're foolish. Let's stay focused on the big game. Let's not turn in on each other. Let's turn to each other and build the power for this nation that's necessary.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, for joining us. We really I appreciate your leadership.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm not the only one. We appreciate you taking time out to join us this morning.
And look forward to talking to you soon. Doors open for you anytime.
Thank you. And continue the legacy. Joe was a good friend and a mentor, so continue the legacy.
Absolutely.
Trying to honor it, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right, back after this.
More from Urban View Mornings after this on Sirius XM Urban View.